I have had two of the greatest days of the season because I cleared the calendar for just working in the garden, and I've been planting bulbs, shrubs, trees, perennials, working on the garden. And so all I've got left is this beautiful native serviceberry. I've always wanted a serviceberry. And I've got some beautiful variegated hollies, a few perennials. I'm almost done. But today we're talking all about protection. We're going to protect plants from the cold, from the deer, and we're going to figure out a way to make hydrangeas bloom. Follow me. One of the most popular gardening questions is, how do I keep my plants safe from the deer? And besides spraying, which I do a lot of spraying with my Bobex, the number one thing that you can do is a physical barrier. And in the case of this mountain laurel, it's one of my favorites. It's called nipmuc. And it's technically poisonous to the deer, but they come and they nibble on the buds and they go lay in the woods and sleep it off, and then they don't eat it again. But it's usually a young deer. But the damage is done. Without the buds, there's no flowers. And yes, I've sprayed it over the winter, but I never keep up with it. And so every year now, I'm just putting some tomato stakes around it. These are about $3 a piece, pounding them in, and that's using this deer netting around it. And we're just going to staple the deer netting on it, surround it, and now I don't have to worry about this. It might not look fantastic, but back here in this part of the garden, I don't care. I just want to see this thing bloom again. All right. So this is pretty simple stuff. And be sure to attach it down low because the deer will get underneath it and push up. Okay. All right, it's protected all winter long. I don't have to worry, I don't have to spray. There's lots of other things I'll be spraying with my Bobex. But next spring, I'll take this off and we'll actually see it bloom, which is what we want. Follow me into the vegetable garden. I like to garden all year round, and I'll show you how I'm doing it. So there are lots of crops that love cold weather. I found this mizuna at Han Nursery. I think they're selling it as an ornamental. It'll go all winter long in here. But I use it as an edible, and it's like a sweet but yet spicy Asian green, and there's a million different ways to use it. So I'm growing this in something called a cold frame, and easily built, banked at 35 degrees towards the south to try and get the angle of the winter sun. But you don't have to be this elaborate with it if you don't want to. This is built out of rough cut cedar, which is naturally rot resistant. And as I said, this stuff, it's so tough that it will go all winter long, and it's just fun to have something growing all winter long. But I'll show you an easier way to do this if you don't want to build one. And I've got one over here filled with kale and more mizuna. So I'm lucky enough to have these old skylights. You don't have to use this. You could use plastic. You could use some hoops with some plastic. But all I've got on the base here is straw. You could actually just stack bales of straw and then put an old window on top of it. Get it from a place like Construction Junction. This is arugula, and look at how happy it is here after going down into the 20s at one point. Again, I'll be harvesting all winter long, and if you love arugula like I do, there's nothing like the fresh greens. Oh man, that's good. Let's keep looking. Oh man, that's good. I found a bunch of these old street light covers at Construction Junction, and they are thick glass work. It's a great greenhouse, and I've just got some beet greens underneath there. And every time the sun comes through here, it just becomes like a greenhouse. And I have 6 or 8 more of these, and I'll still be planting. Now right behind me is a floating row cover. I want to show you how that works. This is one of the easiest ways to protect plants out in the garden. It's a floating row cover. It's a spun-bound, translucent fabric, and it comes in a roll like this. It's inexpensive. You can reuse it. This is our Hamburg rooted parsley. On top is a green that tastes like parsley, and down below it's making kind of like a turnip underneath. And all I'm doing is putting some 11 gauge wire, which I get at my local hardware store. It's already cut to size for me. They use it for hanging drop ceilings somehow. And these little hoops will help support it when there's snow out here. One year I did this, I didn't use the hoops, and we had 22 inches of snow and crushed them. And so all we do is put that on there, and I'll probably, when it gets colder, I'll double cover. I'll put another row cover on top of that, straw around the outside, and again, when the sun comes through here, it heats up that black compost, and when the sun's gone, the compost releases its heat. We've got one more thing, and probably one of the most important things to protect our hydrangeas. It's the #1 garden question, and I talk about it every year. How do I get my hydrangea to bloom? And we have to start now. There are lots of different types of hydrangeas. This one is called Hydrangea macrophylla, or the mop head, and it is the most popular. We have these beautiful either pink or blue flowers. First, never ever prune it, because the buds are on here now that are going to make the flowers next year. And because of the way our weather patterns have been the last 10 years, we need to protect this plant, and I'm just surrounding it with some, again, tomato stakes. And then instead of using deer netting, I'm using this burlap, which kind of acts as a windbreak. And what happens is we get to February, we get a thaw, the buds start to swell, and then it gets really cold and they freeze out and they won't bloom. And so again, another easy job. This burlap has been around for probably 3 or 4 seasons. You can see it's a little ratty. Does not look great in the landscape. If you wanted to use landscape fabric, which is black, you might be able to get away with that. And all I'm going to do is surround this with burlap. And by doing this, I'm getting a lot better blooms out of my Hydrangea macrophyllas. I have one more piece of burlap to add. We're leaving the top open. We're just covering the sides. And as I said, boy, this burlap will do the job. A little bit of a blanket for the plant, and I can't wait to see it bloom. Now, before we finish up, I got one more thing to show you in the vegetable garden. Well, the vegetable garden is filled with over 200 cloves of garlic. It is not too late for you to plant yours. Go to a nursery, find good garlic, split it up into cloves, 6 inches apart, 3 inches down in good soil, and give it this nice blanket of straw. And I cannot wait till the spring when I get my greens. All right, let's finish up. Well, here's the latest addition to the garden. I've had my eye on this angel for a couple years, and we're getting to the end of the season. I went to the nursery, and the manager's like, "Do you really want that thing?" And we made a deal. You go to your local garden center and maybe look for one like I do with a wing cracked off or something and get a deal on it. What used to be here when I moved in 21 years ago was a concrete planter, but I could never get anything to grow in it because this is the path for the deer. Come right through it. And I don't care how deer resistant the plant was that I put in here, they ate it. Now be sure to check me out online. I've got lots of stuff going on there, lots of great garden stories, and that's where you can join my Seed of the Month Club. We are having a lot of fun there. Until next week, I have an order of over 600 bulbs coming. There's still time to plant your daffodils, tulips, hyacinths, crocus, whatever it might be, and you might be able to get a deal on them. We'll see you next week.